Good morning, everybody. I think we are going to start now. I hope you all enjoyed your tea and coffee and had something to snack on. Please feel free to switch your cameras on. We would love to see your faces. So yeah, this is a small group. Please feel free to switch your cameras on. Welcome to session 4, the future of collections and data management. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Maxine Manicum, and I am a data technician at NSCF. So for today's session, we have 6 wonderful presentations, and I, for one, am really excited to hear from all our presenters. We will have a Q&A session at the end of the last presentation. So if you have any burning questions for our presenters, you can jot them down and ask them towards the end. I saw a quote from Dan Heath that said, "Data are just summaries of thousands of stories. Tell a few of those stories to help make data meaningful." And with that being said, I would like to kick off our first presentation from Petra Murray, who is a collections manager at the Agricultural Research Council Plant Health and Protection. And her title of her presentation is Biosystematics Data Liberation. Over to you, Petra.
Good morning, everybody. Hi. I'm Petra Murray, as said, from ARC Plant Health and Protection Biosystematics, and I'm the collection manager of the National Collection of Arachnida. The South African National Collection of Arachnida comprises of 2 collections, the Mites collection, which was started in the mid-1950s, and then the Spiders collection, that was started in 1976. They both are national public goods assets, and the ARC PHP is the custodian of both of these collections. For today's talk, I will focus on the data management in the Spider collection. So data management in the Spider collection started in 1976 with catalog books. In 1991, the digitization of these catalog books started, first of all with Clipper Summer 87 and Clipper 5.3. And then in 2000, the data from these two, or from these servers were transferred to Access 2000. And then in 2005, a dedicated MySQL database with server was developed by the ARC's ICT unit. And in 2014, this MySQL database was just migrated to an SQL database. Both of these, the MySQL and the SQL databases had different modules that had relationships with each other. There was the AFRAD module, or the African Arachnida database module, which contained information on all the arachnids in Africa, and this formed the taxonomic backbone of the database. There was the National Collection module. This module contained the primary information on all the catalogued specimens in the NCA. The SANSA, or South African National Survey Arachnida module, contained all published records on Southern African arachnids. There was also a literature module that contained information on taxonomic publications on African arachnids, and this was used as authority in the AFRAD module. And then there's also static tables that was used to standardize the data input into the databases. And it contained information with regards to around 20 types of information that was inputted into the database. Some of the products that came from this databases was that it formed the backbone of the South African National Survey of Arachnida. Field guides and books were compiled. as well as the first Atlas of Spiders of South Africa. And what we are most proud of is the rare data list of spiders of Southern Africa, a first in South Africa. What was the database also used for was to compile South African spider species list. It's used for biodiversity information, for training of students. It's used extensively in scientific publications, used as the backbone in some API projects we were involved in, as well as some eyeball barcoding. So after several stop-start attempts to migrate this database that we had to specify, finally in August of this year, a dedicated specify server was created by the ARC ICT, and specify 6 was installed on this server. During this process, we were fortunate enough to retrieve and restore 2 dormant specify databases for bees and mites in biosystematics. Then in September, after some cleaning that was done by me, as well as with a great help from Ian Engelbrecht, we could import the taxonomic data set onto the Arachnida database on the specified server. Currently, I'm still busy cleaning approximately 82,300 specimen records before they can be imported into Specify. So my vision for the future using Specify is to maybe put out some new products and maybe some possible collaborations. Updated South African and African spider species list. I was also looking at maybe compiling a type specimen database with possible expansion to the whole of biosystematics, just not for the Arachnida database, as well as then maybe for the whole of South Africa. And then what I think can also be a very nice collaboration is to compile a database on arthropod substrate interactions. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Petro, for that enlightening talk. I love seeing how your data is being used in all those publications. Brilliant. Next up, we have Nikisha Singh, who is a curator at Sandparks, and her presentation is titled Natural Collections, Let's Go Digital. Over to you, Nikisha.
Good morning, everyone. As Maxine mentioned, I am a curator for the Skukuza Biological Reference Collection. Okay, just a bit of background on our collection. So the reference collection was started in the 1950s with the herbarium collection. Approximately 4,000 plant specimens were collected by Mr. H.P. van der Schiff. And these 4,000, more or less 4,000 specimens are still housed within our herbarium today. Animal surveys were undertaken from 1959 until 1970. And these surveys were mostly done by Dr. U. de V. PNR. So he was an assistant biologist at the time, and many of the zoological collections were done by him. So the collections consisted of frogs, reptiles, birds, small mammals, and so on. Okay, the Skukuza Museum and Herbarium building was actually built in December 1959. My apologies for the typo there. And this was done when Dr. Rocco Nobel laid the first cornerstone for the building. Then just some numbers on our collections. We have approximately 10,000 insect specimens, 1,250 reptile specimens, 487 amphibian specimens, 832 bird specimens, 129 mammal specimens, 950 fish specimens, around 1,000 invertebrate specimens, and 16,000 herbarium specimens. Okay, these are just some of the cool specimens that we have within our collection, and I thought it would be cool to show some of these off. One of my favorites are the jewel bugs in the middle sort of there, and our butterfly collections as well. Okay, and just some of the main functions of our facility. We work as an identification service. So many colleagues, researchers, national and international, or any other interested persons, it might be college students or school students that might offer or might require a identification of a certain plant or animal, then they would usually send an email along with an image, or I usually get a lot of WhatsApp images as well, and then I would get back to them in a few days with a correct identification. An inventory system. So it is quite important to know what flora and fauna occur in the Kruger National Park. This assists with monitoring of populations, especially species of special concern, and this filters down into management and conservation decisions. Research. Many researchers from near and wide visit our facility in order to conduct various research, and this might include research on taxonomy or anatomy of certain species. Okay, and one of the most important ones, I think, is the educational component. We offer a lot of workshops, presentations, mentorships, etc. As you can see on the right-hand side, I've had school groups come in and they have, in a very simple way, learned the importance of collections, why we preserve specimens, or why biodiversity is important, as well as college groups as well that come through, or sometimes a handful of students might come through for a week or two, and I will go through with them the process of how maybe, for example, a plant specimen needs to be collected, what parts need to be collected, what equipment you go with into the field to ensure that a properly collected specimen is collected, and thereafter what needs to be done from the drying to the mounting, etc. Okay, so data management. So I'm just going to be speaking a little bit about the data management centered around our herbarium and museum. Okay. So managing data sets is just as important as managing the collections. I recently attended the iDigiBio Introduction to Digitization course. An important point that stuck with me is to have a central data system in place, which allows all data within your museum or herbarium to be properly accessible. You should be able to access files, whether it's hard copies or soft copies, and know exactly where whether it's a policy, whether it is specimen related information, you should be able to locate all of this information. And it was quite important for our museum and herbarium because we have hard copies of documents, but nothing has been really digitized, nor did we have set protocols and procedures or workflows in place. So with the Natural Science Collection Facility and the course that I've been a part of as well, they've helped me so much, because when I started, I was quite new to curation and collections management. So the manual and a lot of colleagues within the Natural Science Collection Facility that I've been collaborating with or getting advice from, they've assisted a lot with this as well. So with regard to the data management, a lot of the data can be hard copies. It might be from ledger books, it might be specimen labels, data sheets from the field. So all this needs to be correctly entered into a spreadsheet. And one of the easiest ways to do this is by using Excel. Then protocols and procedures need to be put into place so that these spreadsheets and this information is updated, cleaned, standardized, etc., according to specific standards. And there are ample resources available that can assist with multiple changes, especially with taxonomic changes. Some of these might be GBIF, South African National Plant Checklist, SANBI Red Data Lists, etc. Okay. And once this data has been cleaned and everything has been entered properly, it can be integrated into a database. There are many databases available, as have been mentioned in the forum so far, whether it might be Specify, Brahms, or another database. And if the museum or herbarium has an already existing database, it is important to check every now and then that protocols and procedures are being followed and that data is being updated and cleaned, standardized, your georeferencing is being done, etc. Okay. During the course of this year in April, we undertook a big task with our herbarium data. It was me and some other colleagues that went into cleaning all of our herbarium data. So we have 16,000 plant specimens. So we embarked on this data cleaning and integration project. It comprised of exporting our Brahms 7 data in an Excel format, and then this data was cleaned according to certain protocols and procedures drawn up with the assistance of other colleagues as well. So we updated, cleaned, standardized, made taxonomic changes, coordinate data was changed, locality names were updated, and this took approximately 6 months. The data is around 95% ready, and it's just a few more errors that need to be ironed out, and then it will be 100% ready. We have trialed a few times to integrate it into Brahms 8, which we will be moving to. And yeah, more trialing still needs to be carried out. So Sandbox, I think Kruger has signed an MOU with SANBI, and once our data is now 100% ready, it will be shared on Brahms 8 and eventually on a national platform. So the main idea is to get this across and accessible to the public or any communities, any interested person that might need to do research or just for interest. Okay, so the future of collections. Okay, so the future of collections. So the future is digitization, but what exactly is digitization? Okay, it is basically the imaging of specimens, be it plants or animals or any collection object. And why should collections be digitized? I think, as mentioned yesterday, there were quite a few points as to the benefits of this: less handling of physical specimens, which will ensure that they do not deteriorate and they will be preserved for a longer period of time. It also means that this information, these images with the associated information will be made available on a international platform. So researchers needing to have a look at certain specimens or characteristics of specimens can sit in the comfort of their offices or homes. This will cut down on travel costs. More research questions can be answered. More important research can be done. And yeah, public access, I think, which is one of the most important. So in 2023, which is fast approaching, we will be embarking on getting our 16,000 plant specimens digitized. So I am in the process of planning certain workflows and pre-planning stages on how are we going to go about this. And once all the specimens have been imaged, they will also be uploaded onto Brahms 8. Yeah, so at the moment, I'm just having a look at different sources and funding opportunities, because we do need funds for the equipment that will be required to carry out the digitization. Okay. Okay, I've just put together a little collage of different types of workstations that can be used for herbarium plant digitization. So it can be a camera on a mount with good quality lighting. Some, I think it's mostly maybe the overseas sort of institutions that use these scanners as well. Or it can just be a light box and a camera. It just depends on the institution, the availability of funding, and the availability of personnel to be able to carry out these workflows as well. Okay, thank you so much, and we'll answer any questions. Yeah. Okay.
Thanks so much, Nikita, for that. The Skukuza herbarium definitely looks very impressive, and data cleaning that entire batch in only 6 months, that's very impressive. Look forward to seeing your data on Brahms 8 very soon. So well done.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Margaret Bartkowiak. I'm so sorry, Margaret, if I'm saying your surname incorrectly. She is a specimen photographer at the Natural Science Collections Facility, and her presentation is titled From Collection Room to Virtual Museum. Chanel will be playing a pre-recorded presentation. Thank you, Chanel.
Hello, everyone. I joined the NSCF team in 2019 and have been imaging the vertebrate type specimens of the Seoul National Museum of Natural History. By photographing the specimens, they are documented and can live forever, saving them for posterity, like a time capsule. The specimens can then be openly available to anyone, anywhere in the world with an internet connection, and not just locked in a strong room. By having the images in a virtual museum, wear and tear from physically handling these important specimens can be minimized. Only a small percentage of institutions' collections are on display. By digitizing them, access and use of natural science collections can also be increased. Remember how long COVID-19 restricted or limited access to collections around the world? What about people who, for various reasons, can't fly abroad to study type specimens for their research, or to see an ancient artifact from their country housed in a museum on the other side of the world? Remember the damage the 2021 Table Mountain fire caused in Cape Town? Just look at what's been happening in our country over the last 2 years. Fires, floods, public unrest, theft, vandalism, and neglect are all real factors that could threaten collections. The imaging of specimens creates a digital replica or twin, safeguarding and preserving it even further. Each specimen tells a story. When I see the specimens, I can't help but think of their history, imagining where they came from. The excitement of camping out in the wild, trying not to get eaten by all sorts of creatures. The thrill of finding a new species. How many people were involved? The planning and logistics. So much work has gone into these specimens being collected, prepared, and safeguarded. It is an honor to be part of the digitization of these precious and irreplaceable specimens. Each specimen is unique. Photographing various types is not a one-size-fits-all. Developing the imaging standards, guidelines, and workflows is an ongoing process. Wet, dry, stuffed, flat, and pinned specimens require different handling, lighting, staging, focus stacking, and editing. The images are taken with a Nikon D850 camera body. This is one of the highest resolution DSLRs available on the market. It shoots at 45.7 megapixels. It is coupled with the Nikkor 50mm or the Micro Nikkor 105 lens, depending on the size of the specimen. Image stabilization is crucial. A sturdy tripod or copy stand is a must. Using a tripod that has a flexible 90-degree center column is also pretty useful, as it allows for imaging specimens from above. A jib allows for imaging larger specimens from above. For lighting specimens, constant LED lighting is used. An 80cm product photography lightbox with LED strips, a 120cm Studio Cube tent for larger specimens, portable LED panels with stands, also for larger specimens, reflectors to bounce light, and diffusers to soften light. The images produced are of the highest possible quality in detail and sharpness, thanks to the glass quality of the lenses, the full frame resolution of the camera sensor, and the technique of focus stacking. Focus stacking involves taking several photos of the same subject at different focus points, from the foreground to the background. These slices or layers of focus are then stacked together to create a single image with sharp focus throughout. Here are some different imaging setups. I try to prevent color contamination by blocking out as much light entering the room as possible, or light bouncing off surfaces like wooden floors and painted walls. When shooting, only the LED lights are on. In this setup, I was imaging large skins and their labels. The jib helped raise the camera higher than the tripod's highest setting, and it also allowed for moving the camera from the cube to the light box with time-saving ease, not having to reset the tripod height. In the top right is one of the setups for the larger fossils that were imaged. The lights were given additional diffusion to minimize harsh shadows and any glare from the smoother parts of the fossils. The bottom image shows the setup for small mammal skulls being imaged in the product photography light box, with the tripod center column positioned at 90 degrees. The camera is tethered to a laptop so you can see exactly what you're imaging, and the images are stored directly to the computer. Here, specimens in the museum display were imaged. These were challenging as the space to work around them was limited. One of the most challenging aspects of my work has been staging specimens. Each one needs a different approach. I've had to be inventive and have definitely improved my DIY skills, using all sorts of things from roll-on deodorant ball sockets, dominoes, pieces of vinyl, cardboard boxes, beads, mustard seeds, sesame seeds, nigella seeds, and poppy seeds. I never knew poppy seeds were kidney-shaped until I saw them close up through a macro lens. Straws, wires, pins, foils, clips, nuts, bolts, baking dishes, finding the right fabric for backgrounds, making mini bean bags out of recycled gloves, putting together staging platforms, figuring out ways to tilt or slide smaller specimens and scale bars in the correct positions for various views, and working out which views to image in the first place. With type specimens, one must be extremely gentle. You can't just position a small delicate skull or split mandible on a piece of press-stick, or balance a big 200-million-year-old fossil skull on its side, hoping it won't snap in half from the force of its own weight. Wet specimens start drying out, changing in color and shape. You have to watch out to not damage all sorts of parts of specimens, like ears and tails and ventral views, or tiny claws hooking onto fabric fibers, not losing loose teeth from skulls, or mixing up labels removed from protective sleeves. Here are some of the final images. This fossil consists of many postcranial pieces. Here, only a fraction of it is on display in the Genesis 1 exhibition hall. In total, 41 different views were imaged. The serval is one of the largest skins in the Ditsong Small Mammals Type Collection. Each mammal specimen has an average of 8 views. The dorsal skin view, the ventral skin view, the dorsal cranium view, the ventral cranium view, the lateral cranium view, the lateral mandible view, the occipital mandible view, and lastly the front and back of the labels. So far, the wet specimens I have imaged have all been image requests for papers and publications. I was really thrown in the deep end when asked to image this thread snake. Globally, there have been massive advances in creating visual media of collection. From 2D and 3D imaging to incredible CT and micro CT scans. Virtual reality is also being focused on for people to explore collections. I attended the Biodiversity Digitization conferences in 2021 and 2022, and here are some of the projects that really stood out for me and made me go, wow. The work being done is meaningful, exciting, fun, and accessible. The Smithsonian Digitization Program Office did the first cultural restoration of an important religious object for an indigenous community using 3D digitization and replication technology. A ceremonial hat was 3D scanned and digitally repaired. 2 replicas were carved out of wood using a CNC milling machine. They were then hand-painted and attachments were added similar to those which had originally adorned the hat. The museum now displays the replica, and the original ceremonial hat has been repatriated to its home in Alaska. Here is a screen recording I made of Neil Armstrong's spacesuit that is on display at the Smithsonian. The suit was 3D imaged, and the amount of detail is out of this world. You can zoom into the very fibers of the suit. Those little vents remind me of Nespresso pods. If ever I want to make a Halloween costume of a spacesuit, I will definitely be coming to this 3D model for ideas. They even imaged the soles of his boots. Here are some amazing CT scans from Museums Victoria in Australia that captured detailed internal images of specimens. This is Morphosource, where you can find 3D data of various collections around the world. The 3D meshes can be printed and studied closer. A company based in America called Macroscopic Solutions is imaging specimens up to 2 to 4 microns in size with their microkit used on DSLR camera bodies. The images produced are comparable to an SEM microscope's images, but are in color. The system is portable and the imaging non-destructive. They are even 3D modeling rodent teeth. The website of the Natural History Museum in London had me exploring its halls during hard lockdown, thanks to its virtual tours. When I lived in the UK, I spent many of my days off from work exploring the exhibition halls. Walking virtually through the museum is awesome and kind of surreal. You can even zoom into the different animals carved into the stone columns and walls. The Natural History Museum is also creating virtual reality experiences.
Hold the World is an interactive virtual reality experience.
Welcome to London's Natural History Museum. In these drawers today, there is a special selection of objects ready for you to explore.
Thank you very much. There we are. Wow. Whoa. That is amazing. Heavens above. Gosh. Whoops. Look, it was going to hit me in the face. I'm bound to put my hands up to defend myself. It is breathtakingly beautiful.
Thank you for joining this talk, and a special thanks to the Tsong National Museum of Natural History for supporting and facilitating the imaging of their vertebrate type specimens.
Well done, Margaret. That was a brilliant presentation. I think after all your trial and error attempts, you can start a YouTube channel and tell people what works for them. Because from, did you say mustard seeds? Yeah, it sounds very exciting. So well done. And it's also wonderful to see what is being done around the world. Thank you for sharing that with us. I definitely do agree with you. Digitization is definitely the next step, as each specimen holds a tremendous amount of history, as you said. So brilliant, brilliant, brilliant presentation. Well done. Next up, we have Hester Steyn. She's a scientist at SANBI Pretoria, and she's on the field, so we have a pre-recording from her. Thank you, Chanel.
Hi, Maxine, thanks. I see Hester did join us, but I am going to play her pre-recording. Just give me a thumbs up if the sound is working, please.
Good morning, everybody. I want to tell you about the Data Management and Skills program offered through the NSCF at the University of Pretoria in 2021. I was one of 19 students who enrolled for this course. The course consisted of 5 modules and ran over a period of 5 months. At the beginning of each module, we had 2 days of virtual lectures and then had approximately 4 weeks to finish an assignment and prepare for the exams before the next module started. To receive a certificate, you needed to pass all 5 modules. A Slack channel was created to enable easy communication within the group. Here we posted questions, frustrations and support to each other. Except for the 2 days of lectures per module, this course was pretty much self-study, and a group of students and Ian Engelbrecht met weekly to discuss problems and progress with our assignments. As it was a tight schedule and we had to show progress at each week's meeting, I even took my JavaScript to the Molapour Nature Reserve. Module 1 was Foundations of Computer Science, and it provided an overview of the history of computers, basic computer terminology, as well as an introduction to programming. In this module, we were introduced to HTML and CSS to produce web-based pages. We also looked at data types, if statements, and loops. One exercise we had in this module was to create a table using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript that included text in different fonts, sizes, as well as clickable images and a few buttons. Another exercise was to write code to convert from one currency to another. The programming language JavaScript very quickly made us wonder whether enrolling for this course was the right thing to do, as most of us had great difficulty in understanding basic programming, not to mention trying to write code in JavaScript. But in the end, we've managed far better than we initially thought. In Module 2, Databases and Data Management, the focus shifted to working with data, and this was much more familiar to most of us. We learned about the different types of data, relational and non-relational databases, as well as data management tools and data visualization. We used MS SQL Server Express to create our own relational database with different tables, fields, and records. And we had to add, change, and extract data from these tables. This was much more fun. With Module 3, it was back to the difficult stuff, programming basics using Python. We were introduced to different programming environments, the difference between logical and syntax errors, and much, much more. At least some terminology was now more familiar, as we've worked with data types, variables, if statements, and loops in Module 1. This module also included functions, a very important part of programming, and we learned how to work with .csv files. Like Module 1, this was a difficult part of the course, especially if you were not familiar with writing code. In one of our assignments, we needed to import data from a CSV file and write the Python code to do different calculations and present the results in graphs. In Module 4, we were presented with something totally different, critical thinking. And according to our study guide, critical thinking is a key skill required for all aspects around data management and programming. In this module, we discussed the analysis of arguments, decision-making, problem-solving techniques, and systems thinking. It became apparent that information from non-peer-reviewed sources should be handled with care, well, sometimes even from peer-reviewed sources. Our assignment was on how statistics and graphs can be used to mislead readers. A very interesting topic. One would expect that data presented in the form of statistics, graphs, and/or maps would be accurate and trustworthy. However, Klonowski stated that, quote, "Statistics done honestly can make a statement like no other, but done dishonestly are deeply deceptive because the readership believes the numbers have been run up honestly," unquote. It is of the utmost importance to apply critical thinking skills when looking at any visualization of information, as graphs are sometimes deliberately incorrect and intended to mislead or even shock the reader. This graph represents an example of false correlation. The two variables may appear to be correlated, but have nothing to do with each other. Module 5, Project Management Basics, provided the skills and knowledge required to define, plan, and execute a project. Topics included Introduction to Project Management in IT, People, and Issue and Risk Management. The central aspect of project management is the triple constraint principle. Time, scope, and cost are interdependent variables that can be adjusted while managing projects. They all work together to meet the customer's quality requirements. For the assignment, we needed to plan a project incorporating all our newly acquired project management skills. At the end of August, we wrote our last exams and waited in anticipation for the results. By November 2021, we regrouped to apply our programming skills to a few practical problems in our working environments. The group became smaller and smaller, and we are currently only 3 regulars trying to write Python code, with Ian trying to steer us in the right direction. Again, we meet weekly to discuss our problems and progress, and another Slack channel specific for the Python group was created. Please join us if you have any interest in programming, especially in Python and solving problems. Some of the projects we've completed include the determination and listing of duplicate barcodes in a dataset. Barcodes should be unique within a dataset, at least in Zambia Herbarium it should. Our code indicated that there are 127 duplicate barcodes in the National Herbarium's dataset, and we should still investigate this. Another very useful piece of code determines the number of specimens and/or species per quarter degree square. This is used to produce specimen or species richness maps. The code to convert different formats of coordinates into decimal degrees was written by Ian in JavaScript, and the team is still busy translating the code into Python. We've also worked on code to replace old province names like Transvaal and Cape with the new names by running some checks against town names and QDSs included in the locality streams. Over 6,000 records in Bodatsa were updated by replacing the old province name with a new one using this code. We also finalized code to sort a set of mixed herbarium specimen images into folders by family. But this is not all. During the last year and a half, we also learned the basics of OpenRefine, the data cleaning software, Git and GitHub, the existence of EXIF data. We drew workflows and attended international data conferences like TATWIC and BioDigicon. Thank you very much to everybody who made this journey possible. Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation, Hester. The data management course seems very impressive. Lots of hard work, so well done for completing it. And thank you for sharing your journey with us. Hester did say in her presentation, if anybody would like to join the Python group, I think you can contact her or Ian, maybe, yeah, you can liaise with them. But very impressive work that's been done with coding and all of those things. Awesome. Now, our next presentation is by Matlatse Khatla, and he's a data quality specialist at the Natural Science Collections Facility. His presentation is titled Importance of Documentation, a Case for Data Management Workflow Documents. Over to you, Matlatse.
Afternoon, everyone. And so I'm going to be giving a talk on importance of documentation and case for data management workflows. As you have heard with the first presentations like yesterday, what the NSCF is, which is a partnership of 17 institutes, which consists of 10 museums, 3 councils, 3 universities, and many more collections, probably more than 150 collections. I'm actually low-balling this 150. It's a lot of collections, which is a variety of dry and wet food. And on top of that, there are certain objectives that we're trying to achieve as a hub, as an institution, as a partnership, which means there's a lot of moving parts within all these partnerships. So with those moving parts, what is basically static, what will help us mine through all these moving parts are documentations. The importance of documentation serve as a communication role They bolster support, and they basically serve as a basis for applying for funding. Within documentations, you get where the institution, the legal basis of the institutions, and at the same time, all these documentations have to be managed in some way. So there needs to be a documentation management system. Implementing what's in those documentations help create a strong foundation. It helps build trust within communities, since you'll be basically undertaking what you said you will do. And importantly as well, it helps with continuity in cases where you find that people leave their roles, people pass on. In those cases, there's a gap that is created, and then there needs to be filled, and proper documentation will help fill that gap in terms of continuity. And with a lot of people will understand this, that with proper documentation, it helped during those periods of auditing. Now, with that being said, what I want to specifically focus on is a subset of documentation within the NSCF, which is chapter 4 of the manual, which is the data management workflow. So what I'm first going to do is take you through an example of a developed data management workflow, one of the data management workflow, which in this case is a data and image request workflow. So this is an Albany Museum workflow, which was developed through Albany and the Hub team. So this will be the cover page of the workflow. This is how it will look like. And page 2 basically would outline the diagram of how the workflow is. These are the steps that you would take when somebody is requesting data or an image. And in this case, I'll just quickly take you through this diagram. What you will do is receive an email from somebody who's interested in data, in your particular type of data. And in this case, you'll have to determine whether it's a record or images. If it happens to be images, then what you will do next is determine whether the type of images that are being requested, do you have them, or do you need to go and take images of those particular specimens? If you have them, then you just sift through those images and send them to the requester. If you do not have them, then you have to follow another workflow, which is called imaging workflow. Particular steps that leads you to taking images of specimens. And then if it happens to be records that are being requested, then you go through specify, which is the database we use to archive the records, to capture and archive records. And then what you do is run a query, and then you export it through Excel. And when you export it in Darwin core terms, and then you email the requester those records, and you also add a data sharing letter with those records. And then you add the data request to the quarterly report. So this is what you do. It's the particular type of steps you follow whenever somebody requests data or images. And this outlines the write-up of what I just took you through, since sometimes it's difficult to follow just a diagram. So it needs to be followed by writing up what you mean by certain steps. So this is the outline of those diagrams, and all these 3 pages basically determines what a workflow document would look like. So we've undertaken this process where there was a gap that was seen that a lot of institutions do not have this particular workflow. workflow document. So what happens is a lot of people will undertake where they know what they are doing and they do it well. The issue is that this process is not put on paper, so we basically depend on a word from those experts in those particular processes. So what's important is to put this process in paper, which is important also for continuity, that if they were to move on to something else, and this gap where somebody else not to fill in their shoes, they will be able to know what to do or what has been done before, and they will be able to follow so that there's continuity there. So after that gap was revealed, and then the next process was to now close that gap. So there are about 12 workflows which have been determined that needs to be developed for the data management workflow. And these workflows are outlined here on your right, on your left. And having engaged with some of the institutions, there's a couple of workflows that we have developed so far. And the diagram here in the middle indicates in percentages how many workflows or the progress that has been made so far in terms of developing those workflows. Herbariums have made headways since they are basically complete with their workflows, and the museums, we still got some way to go, but some museums are almost there. But this is not, this is because of different factors, which is why I'm going to just now take you through those different factors that are affecting this type of progress that you're seeing on the graph. So some of the issues that we are coming across now is problems like load shedding in terms of us trying to develop these workflows. It's difficult now to find a date where we can come together and develop these workflows, and other issues, finding a date. And sometimes when we do find that date, we have problems of people showing up for those dates because of other commitments. But there are also opportunities where some institutions, we haven't met them yet. We're making means so that we can meet and start this process. A lot of those institutions will be the ones that you've seen that are not, that we haven't done any workflow at all. So those institutions we still yet to meet. And other institutions as well prefer that we add specify to their database before we can undertake this process. So first we need to install specify for them and customize it before we can start now talking about developing workflows. Now, having said all this, the goal of this whole process basically is not just about standardizing these procedures, especially where different institutions that hold the same specimens can look into each other's procedures and see which is the best one, which is the one that works best. It's also to help that these procedures meet certain requirements, certain data standard requirements, and also to help so that this process is efficient in terms of capturing data, making sure that putting efficient steps in place to ensure that data are archived, that data is backed up. And most importantly, it's also to reduce the duplication that can take place, especially in this environment where you get different institutions that have the same collections. You might find one institution has already data captured information, and then when somebody else comes in, they go through the same process of data capturing the same information. So through these workflows, we're hoping to reduce those type of duplications where when you go through those processes, you've understood that there are certain specimens that the data set has already been captured, and it's not necessary for you to capture the same data. With that, I'd like to thank you.
Thank you, Makatia. I think it's safe to say that everyone here, or almost everyone here, is involved in workflows and creating these workflow documents for the institution. So it was great to see the process of creating these documents and what the end goal is and the process. Thank you so much. And lastly, we have Christian Steenkamp, and he's a scientific curation technician at NSCF, and he will be doing a presentation on an integrated approach to managing collection data. Thank you, Christian. Over to you.
Thank you, Maxine. I'm just sharing my screen here. So what I want to show you today basically is a way of integrating a lot of the things we've heard previously now, different software approaches and workflows to enable us to effectively stay on top of our collections and make sure that we have the insights that we require to make decisions going forward. And I'm going to show you NIME, which is a software tool that's open source and can integrate multiple different other software packages in order to sort of make a very powerful workflow-based system where you send information from one side through a process and you get results on the other side. The software is free and open source, so a lot of people working on it. It means there's no paywalls, no really restrictions as to why you need to use this. But the benefit of using something like this, and you'll see it throughout the presentation, is it's a visual programming sort of process versus the traditional coding or code-based programming, which is sometimes a sort of a big step up for someone that's not used to coding or, in these different languages. So if you have a tool that you can move around that does a lot of the work for you, where you basically just input the parameters, you can very easily set up interesting workflows for your data and for other types of information, which you'll see. Now, I'm going to show you the integration between Google Sheets, R, Python, and JavaScript, and not SQL, but SQL can also be used. So you can connect straight to a SQL database using NIME. The benefits of this is you have a tool that can consolidate data, monitor the progress of a team or an individual, do quality monitoring, quality assurance, and even reporting if you want to. So the way of linking data to NIME in terms of Google Sheets is a node-based software. So you basically, if you can see on the slide, you authenticate your user sign in, connect to the sheet or workbook that you have in Google Sheets, and then you would actually target the actual sheet where your data capture is entering information, for example. Another approach is to use CSV. So you just do an extraction out of your specified database from a query, and then you feed this into NIME. And what I'm doing here with this group by node that you can see on the screen is just merging all of the category of numbers into a single record, but I'm separating all different entries so that all of the information is retained for a single catalog number, and that can then later be reviewed quite easily. Now, I want to show you a workflow as you can see it here on the screen, and don't get overwhelmed by all of this. What this workflow does is it consolidates data, it monitors progress, and it does some quality control in between. So if we start here from the left, we have our data capture sheets, and these sheets allow us to have different data capturers working on a single sheet, which means if there's any issues with any of the capturers or we need to address certain issues that they might be doing, we can actually go to them and say, listen, we need to standardize this input or that input, Now, this information in the workflow, then feeds through these data capturers from different perspectives here. So it feeds into what we have a constant value column node here, where we just add which data capture was linked. Now that's linked to the different records. And once all of this information is linked and we've pulled all of the different sheets, we then concatenate them. So we merge them into a single sheet, give them a row number, and send them to a joiner node. Okay, now I'll tell you what the joiner node does now. On the other hand, so this information from the data capturers is capturing storage information. And with the ethanol concentration is somebody else dealing with ethanol concentrations, but the data is not linked yet. So what we do is we feed this data to a joiner node, and we join the data together. And now we have all of the storage information together with its concentrations and ethanol information for that particular record. So what happens then is if we move to the next section here. Okay, I'll just speak to what I can see here on the screen now. Since the Zoom is in the front, I apologize for this. Okay, so from the joiner node, we want to track progress and see what these what the team is doing and what's happening as we're going along. So we have a tool here, the storage progress monitoring tool, which calculates the different cabinets that we use, or which cabinets we haven't worked on yet, or jars that we haven't seen yet, or catalog numbers that we haven't interacted yet. And this basically node takes all of this information and feeds it through different processes to clean the information and standardize it before sending it to R scripts. And these R scripts calculate the missing numbers for us based on the highest number in the series. So we always have a good idea of at least how much they are based on what we've seen and where we take that information. Now, this information can then be used to export CSV files that we can then generate the cabinet numbers, the jar numbers, and the catalog numbers that are presumed to be missing, or things that we haven't interacted with yet. When we go down to the process here, we look at quality control. If you can look here, we have a specimen to volume ratio fields. And, you can see the data is actually quite dirty. There's different variations of high, low, and medium. And what I do, or what we can do here with the step here, is we can do a string replace or have a dictionary. And the dictionary we populate with the different values that are incorrect next to the correct values for that. And this will automatically, as the data feeds through, pick up on all of these variations within that column and actually fix that for us. So if you look at the field control after we've sent it through the dictionary, you have nice clean data here. So we've standardized the entry and make sure that everything is nice and neat before sending it further down the pipe. In terms of the monitoring of the ethanol concentrations, as we are feeding data in it, we have real-time views because we're sending this to different R scripts. So we can actually see immediately as we are working what the distributions of the ethanol is by cabinets, where's the percentages lying, as well as even going deeper into different container sizes. As you can see on the screen, the 500 mils have got a lot of variation in those. And these 100 mil jars are at a low percentage. So we have immediate information as we are working to make decisions with. Then going into Ian and his Python team and Esther, I actually pulled in your Python they converted the JavaScript version of the coordinate parser from JavaScript to Python, and actually pulled this into KNIME to show the example here. So we can use that script here that takes the verbatim coordinates and then converts them into decimal coordinates. And we're just putting it into our workflow. So if you have different scripts lying around, you can bring them all in and connect them with KNIME. Then finally, we send this information to the master sheet. So what we've done here is we have a final master sheet that takes all of the storage information, links that to the ethanol concentration information, then cleans the standard columns for us, gives us insight into the process, and then finally actually merges it into a central location. And by using Google Sheets, we also have version control because we wipe the sheet, put the new information in it, and that different versions in Google Sheets actually keeps that. The next is just quality assurance and processing. What we want to do here is make sure that the taxonomy is up to date, but we are also monitoring the progress of the team as we are working. So the information here comes from the left. So we have an extract of the database, which again we gradually take and feed to a joiner node. And then we have a reptile synonyms list here that has been compiled from the reptile database, and Adrian did a lot of work standardizing this, making sure everything is nice and neat. And we can use the synonyms here after sending it through the duplicate role folder in the joiner column, connect the synonyms to the verbatim determination field of the database, and actually link these records based on the synonym, the old synonym, and the verbatim records. And this is an automatic process. Now, once we've done this, it goes further down the node and it groups the catalog numbers again. And then we want to find any inconsistencies in this process. So what we do is we filter the entries on the verbatim row filter where there are duplicates. Now, a duplicate would be two verbatim identifications provided, and in the other sense, a single verbatim identification. So if it's a single verbatim identification, there's no pipe. As you know, we put the pipe in there to separate multiple entries. And we feed this then to the final stage here where we have the taxonomic updates. And you can see here where we've come from. This is basically the view. So these are all updated based on the synonym linked to the verbatim determination. And you can see here with this red box, there is the current names, and what we're actually picking up quite a lot of is current scientific names, in this case Pachydathlus capensis and Reconditus, actually sharing a synonym, which means we need to go have a look. So by using these pipe separators, when we move through a spreadsheet, we can very quickly see where there are potential issues that we need to address. Now, this whole process needs to be monitored so that we see how fast and effective we are moving or working. And we can do this again by sending this information to a progress section, and using the dates and time series, we can actually look at our progress per week with some significant events marked in red and show how gradually that goes up, as well as our progress per day. And also you can see as our team moves forward and gains more experience, we're actually increasing in productivity and the amount of records that we can look at per day. Now, this is an example basically of what we do. Our other workflows are much more intricate and can do a lot more, but this is just to give you a little bit of a taste. So the benefits of using this is it's an automated data processing workflow. Once you've established what you want to do, you can continue doing it with the click of a button. It's a visual workflow, so it's easy for people to understand, and you can get a lot done with this if you are not a coder. So there's low-code data manipulation analysis that can take place. There's many nodes and modules and packages and code snippets available online that can actually show you that you can pull into this workflow. But there's also an opportunity for intermediate and advanced users to harness the power of this integration software. And then the best of all is custom workflows and components can be shared. So if I develop something and you want access to it, you contact me and I send it to you, you put it into your NIME, and Bob's your uncle, you can continue. So I hope that was okay, and apologies for the technical issues, but otherwise, thanks a lot.
Thanks so much, Christian. I think after this, I low-key went to ask Brodwin and Ian if they can hook us up and if we can try it. It seems really thrilling, and it seems like, as Shanal said, once you get the first part right, it seems like it's easy. Bob's, as you said, Bob's your uncle. So well done on that. It looks amazing. Thank you to everybody for joining, and thank you to everybody for presenting at this session. I, for one, have really learned a lot. I know that in Engelbrecht, there's lots of trainings on data, and it's great to see how these trainings are helping data and how data is being used and the programs that are being implemented and used during this time. So we have 4 minutes for questions before we bounce to the main plenary session. Does anybody have any burning questions for any of our presenters? Now is your time. Anybody? I see we're getting lots of comments. No one has any questions?
So I think that means the presentations were great and informative, and they explained everything well, and so no further questions.
Yes. Okay, if there's... Yes, Michelle, great work that's been done with the data and collections. Brilliant, actually, absolutely brilliant.
Just a note, we are short on time to go on the other side.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for amazing presentations and for joining. And now we will go back to plenary. So you have to click off here and then join the main session. Awesome. Bye, everyone.